Hey good people, and welcome back to the channel. I just saw part 2 of the reunion, and if I had to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it a solid 5. I felt that this reunion provided some clarity on some things, but I wasn't surprised that many of my predictions came true, because people simply can't change their nature. Now over the course of this review, I will discuss the important scenes from this episode, and I will share my opinions on some of the decisions that were made by some of the cast members. I will warn you ahead of time that some of my opinions on this reunion might be unpopular. So if you get offended by them, you can forward your complaints to my customer service department and the concerns will be addressed in a timely manner. So without any further delay, let's jump right in. This episode picks up with Rose accusing Cam of getting another chick pregnant. We then finally get some context as to why she made this claim. Rose claims that she checked Cam's phone and saw a text message from a woman named Alexa, and she saw some information to suggest that there was a pregnancy scare. Cam denies that he had a baby on the way, but it's later confirmed that Rose had been sleeping with Cam and Hussein, and Rose accused Cam of being a con artist. Even later down the line, we get a scene with Cam and Hussein explaining why they eliminated Rose. So let's go through each one of these one by one. I do believe that Rose was going through Cam's phone unbeknownst to Cam, which I find to be creepy, especially if two folks are not in a relationship. Even if two people are in a relationship, if you feel the need to sneak around behind your partner's back and go through their phone to look for dirt, it indicates that there's a lack of trust, and you should probably stop dealing with that person. But back to this claim. I believe that Rose saw a text message exchange between Cam and Alexa. I believe that in that text message exchange, there was probably a picture of her pregnancy test. The million-dollar question is, did Cam lie about having a baby on the way, or did Rose try to spin what she saw on Cam's phone the same way she tried to spin Hussein's situation with jail? Throughout this reunion, Cam has been on defense the entire time, and it seems like he's had to over-explain situations that don't require that much explanation. I do believe that Cam was buttering up Alexa's buns the same way he was tending to Rose's buns. I do believe that Cam and Rose were not in a committed relationship when they were dealing with each other, especially when condoms are being used. I think that Rose was keeping her options open during this process while expecting Cam to be solely focused on her. So all in all, I think that two things are true in this situation. Cam was messing with his ex Alexa, but Rose made it her mission to make every guy who rejected her look bad at the reunion, regardless of whether her allegations were true or not. Next, let's talk about Rose and Hussein hooking up. In my last review, I said that Rose and Hussein had to have hooked up, and this was based on how Rose was acting towards Hussein. Rose came off as a scorned lover in last week's episode, and I said to myself, either Rose is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, or Hussein had given her that good old pickle tickle, and that's what caused Rose to get all her wires crossed up. Well, we know now what happened, and I said in my previous review, I really don't care who hooks up on the show because they're all adults. But I focus on the hookups because there's a greater lesson to be learned from the situation. I think there are many women out there like Rose. They go into the dating scene with the best of intentions, but they make the worst mistakes when dealing with men, and when the situation blows up in their face, they refuse to accept accountability for their part in the madness, and they result in trying to hurt others to cope with the hurt that they feel inside. In this reunion episode, Rose claimed that she was a very loyal person in the dating process. But if that were the case, why was she sleeping with Hussein and Cam within the same time frame? Better yet, why would Rose then come on TV and attempt to air out all the dirty laundry if she were truly healed? Any man with sense who is watching the reunion who will either see Rose as somebody to hook up with and discard, or someone to avoid due to all the drama and baggage that she comes with. I think that Rose needs time to heal, and she needs to be celibate because, in my opinion, she will continue to go down the same path until she can switch things up. Now to the last point, I do think that Hussein and Cam had a genuine connection with Rose. But because Rose did not set up proper boundaries, and she wasn't completely honest, things ended the way that they did. We then get a scene with Eddie, and I don't think this scene needed as much time as he did. Eddie was completely laid back in this process, and I don't think he really had a type. We watched the scene with Coley trying to kiss Eddie, and Eddie avoiding her like she's a Jehovah's Witness. I applaud Eddie for having the wherewithal to know that if he had kissed Coley right then and there, his other connections would have likely voted him off, and Eddie tried to play the long game. But in this scene, we had Rose who felt the need to tell everybody that Eddie was in a full-blown relationship during the show, to which Eddie denied. In my opinion, this reunion had a ton of conflicting information that was shared between multiple people, And going forward, everybody who comes to these reunions need to take a lie detector test. And here's how it will work. The cast members would share their experience with a polygraph expert, and when the drama unfolds during the reunion, Nephew Tommy would be there to read the results of the polygraph. It would add an interesting dynamic that would hold the cast members accountable, in my opinion. In the next scene, Kiara and Jay briefly talk about the Sahara situation, which was more of a miscommunication than anything. But we also learn that Kiara and Jay are no longer together. Big surprise, huh? We learned that after the show ended, Jay wanted to decompress from the process, while Kiara wanted to keep the energy from the process going. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I gotta side with Jay on this one. According to Jay, he and Kiara were together for 16 hours a day, nearly every day for 1 month straight. And in my opinion, unless you're a Siamese twin, that amount of togetherness, especially if you just met somebody, can be a bit too much. So Jay says, hey, let's still be together in this relationship, but let's try to adjust to our normal lives and decompress from the process a bit. Kiara disagreed, and she wanted Jay to take her out if not every day, then multiple days out of the week. As a man that's in a relationship, I can only speak for myself when I say this. I do not take my own woman out to eat multiple times a week because of how much money will be wasted in the process, and because I cook regularly. And if I had to spend 16 hours a day, every day, all the time with her, I would lose my mind and she would lose hers as well. So I felt that Jay was being realistic with his request to decompress from the process. I felt that Kiara wanted what she wanted and she didn't want to compromise. Now that Kiara and Jay are no longer together, we learn that Kiara has a new man, who isn't the my man, but he's likely somebody who's given her that good old pickle tickle until they figure things out. Jay also indicated that he has a roster of women that's on call should he feel the need to shine their bat signal in the air. So all in all, this was a wasted connection. We then get a scene of Deonna and all of her connections on the show, though we only really hear from Eddie and Hussein. But in this scene, Deonna talks about feeling that she shouldn't have to compromise herself to be with somebody. And in the grand scheme of things, I agree that a person shouldn't have to change who they are in order to be with someone else. But with that being said, if a person considers himself a good catch and they are still single while pushing 40 years old, then at what point do they ask themselves if their standards are too high or unrealistic? I say all that to say that when I saw Deonna in this process, she went on a show that promotes speed dating on steroids. She never became vulnerable and she never wanted to compromise what she wanted in order to get the man, which is fine. But women like Deonna would rather remain single for an eternity than contemplate reevaluating what they want out of a prospective partner. I'll use the following analogy to hammer my point. Imagine if I said to all the women out there, hey women, I'm looking for a woman that has the body of a goddess, the bedroom skills of Superhead, the cooking skills of Patti LaBelle, but she has to be as submissive as Kanye's. She has to make good money while helping me with 50% of the bills, and I refuse to compromise on what I want. Would most women out there encourage me to stick to my standards and not compromise? Or would they tell me that I'm crazy and I need to change things up? That's just some food for thought. In the next scene, we get to hear from Shanice. Now, when I first started doing reviews for this season of Ready to Love, I mentioned Shanice's outfits and how she was leading with her body more than her personality. At the reunion, Shanice reveals that her confidence in her body and nudity came from her learning how to love herself after being a victim of abuse. After hearing that, her actions make a little more sense, and I'm glad that she's now with somebody who can appreciate who she is on the inside and out. And for the final major scene, we get an update with Tay and Cisco. And surprise, surprise, they are no longer together. If there was a reoccurring theme that was present throughout this season, it was that women should stick to their standards and be fine with being single until their standards are met. Tay admitted that she had ended things with Cisco over finances, which is asinine because Cisco was extremely transparent about his situation from the beginning, and she still went through the process and strung him along. What I find disappointing about the public reaction to Cisco and Tay is that most women out there side with Tay and view Cisco as a bum for not having his finances in order before wanting to date. Here's the double standard at play with this notion. A lot of women tie down a man's worth to how much money he makes and his willingness to financially support a woman who's already making her own money but is not willing to spend her money on the man. In other words, these women feel that if a man can't afford to take a woman out to an upscale restaurant like the Cheesecake Factory or Red Lobster, then he has no business dating at all. Yet when it comes to what a woman needs to do to be eligible for entering the dating market, she essentially has to be breathing and want to have a desire to be with a man. We never really hear women putting each other down if they don't have things together before wanting to date. Now, Tay admitted that her only issue with Cisco was his finances, and she sabotaged the relationship because she wanted what she wanted. In other words, Tay found a good man, but she ended things because he wasn't financially on her level. That's within her, but I'm sure there are women out there that would love to have a guy like Cisco. Guys who make the kind of money that Tay wants are few and far between. And I'm also sure that Tay wants that high-earning guy to be physically attractive, be a beast in the bed, be willing to cater to her every need, and be loyal. But I hate to break it to Tay. That type of man is less than 1% of the world's population. Unfortunately, I feel that Tay is going to be single for a while. And in her moment of loneliness and vulnerability, she might slip up and sleep with a guy who she finds attractive, but she'll simply keep things on the couch, and she won't consider lowering her standards until she's over 60 and has nobody else looking her direction. And in my opinion, it's kind of sad that these double standards exist between men and women. Take Barack Obama, Ryan Coogler, and Denzel Washington, for example. They were essentially broke when they entered the dating market, but they had women who saw the potential, and those women took a chance on. Now look where those women are now. Sadly, we have a lot of women out there who would rather remain single and constantly ask about where all the good, instead of taking a chance on a man who is verified to be, though he might be broke, but he has the potential to do great things. Those are just my. In closing, it is my opinion that this season of Ready to Love was a huge waste of time. I went into this season with extremely low expectations, and the 4-month break is what really made this season worse than what it would have been if we had just gotten the madness over with right then and there. While the season was a waste of time with all the drama, I feel that there were life lessons to be learned from all the situations that the cast members faced. But I want to thank everybody who tuned into my reviews. I don't know if I'll be reviewing any future seasons of Ready to Love, but I appreciate those folks who have shown me love for my work on these reviews. So if you have any comments related to the review or the episode, feel free to leave them below in the comment section and I'll be sure to reply to everybody. Until next time, stay tuned and stay safe. Peace.